What's up, Commanders? We're back with a mini installment of Burny's Briefing Room. Light Touch joins us again to go over some of the highs and lows of March and what you can expect to see coming up in April. So thanks again for joining us, Light Touch. How are you doing?
Great. It's a pleasure to be back here, my man.
Awesome. So why don't we just get right into it? Our last Briefing Room podcast was just over a month ago now. How have things been going on your end since then?
Yeah, man. By and large, things have been going very well. We have experienced a few technical difficulties along the way this month. Some of the things we could control, like noticed bugs at the last minute during a deploy, and there were things that we couldn't control, like the Facebook outage that we had all experienced the other week. Um, But some fun content has been released to the players in the form of the Shepherd Boss Base, PvP Season 13, our event, and most notably the Command Center 15 upgrades. Specifically, that last one is what I'm most happy about. For months, the players have been crying out for better defensive capabilities to offset the attackers, and we feel we have made some very good progress in that direction with our released content.
Awesome. So before we get more into those specifics, why don't we talk about kind of the turbulent releases that you alluded to just there? What has the team learned from those, and how are we moving forward now?
A good question. After each weekly release, whether it's a good release or a bad release, we sit down as a team and those involved and talk through what went wrong or what did very well and what we could be doing better going forward. We've had a lot to talk about over the last few weeks, unfortunately, and I think a lot of that is because leading up to the CC15 release, the team was working very hard to ensure that we push the content out quickly and cleanly. With the whole team focused in on this particular feature, we didn't give other cadenced content the close love it deserved, and we would catch last minute mistakes during our weekly deploy, of which needed to be fixed before we allowed players back into the game. Going forward, we were much more cognizant of where we had oversight, and we'll be doing everything in our power to ensure that we catch it before release day, so as to not impact the player base that just wants to get in and play our game.
Hmm. Yeah, so a couple times this last month we had to either go into emergency downtime or take, extended downtime or additional ones for a couple of the releases. So my question is, at what point in the whole process do you feel like taking, emergency maintenance or additional downtime is needed? Kind of what's the process to make that decision?
Yeah, so it's sort of on a problem by problem basis, depending on the severity of the thing we catch, whether it is very much player facing and player impactful or it could affect a player experience, is usually our gauge for whether we actually go for extended downtime to make sure that this goes away. If it is something that the players don't notice and that we can fix later on without impacting the player experience, we often will just bring it up and then in the background release uh, the content needed to fix whatever the problem was at the time.
So we've talked about CC15 a little bit already, but we did see the release of that in March, and it was a big deal. Um, can you give the listeners tuning in an idea of how much work goes into a feature like that?
Yeah, for sure, man. We try to produce a CC upgrade every 6 to 7 months, just for a cadence feature and to keep things fresh. These lifts are always very large, however, and very tough on the team. The day-to-day content itself doesn't slow down, and so we have to do all the extra work for a CC in conjunction with the week-over-week content. So I'll give you sort of a layout of a timeline and what sort of is involved when we do something like this.
Hmm.
So first of all, our designers and product team put their heads together and dig into the analytics of the game and identify which types of bases and equipment are needed for upgrades. Next, a document gets drafted up with a proposed plan of what we should be buffing and adding additional levels or functionality to. In addition to the analytics stuff, the team put their heads together and come up with ideas for things that we should be building. And we also listen to the player base and see if there's anything that has a lot of merit with what they are putting forward, or just straight up sounds cool. So from there, the leadership of the game sits down in a giant sort of circle of love and go through the document and go through the document to decide what we can do, what we can't do, what would be nice to do if we had the time. Then a final document is drafted up with all the ideas and things we are planning on doing for the event, and we hand it over to our project manager, who then breaks the work down into manageable chunks and starts handing out the work to the team, setting deadlines, making sure all the disciplines are on task, etc., etc., etc. Art, engineering, design, and product all do work their butts off to get everything that was assigned to them done, and in the time allotted, with their quality assurance team then left to take up what has been created and play the hell out of it for its functionality, and not only just for the functionality, but also for the playability. Because it makes no sense for us to create something that functionally works perfect, but is no fun to interact with for the player. So that is the other thing that we make sure QA is testing when they do their testing of these features.
Awesome.
Uh, yeah, and for CC15 is in its entirety, that process itself takes about 2 months to go from the planning cycle through to release.
Cool. So
Yeah.
were you happy with how the players adopted the CC15 content? I know they were pretty happy with some of the more defensive-minded stuff that was released with it.
Yeah, I was very, very happy with the CC15 content. For me specifically, the low wire entanglement and the dragon's teeth were like my piece de resistance. Uh, Before joining the gaming industry, I was actually an infantry officer with the Canadian Army, and it boggled my mind that we didn't already have something like this in a war game. So I'm very happy to see these types of barriers come to life, and it is always, most importantly, great to see hard work finally delivered into the players' hands, and it's nice to see that the players themselves have readily adopted all these things.
Hmm. So I think the players will kill me if I don't ask real quick. Whatever happened to super walls?
Super Walls, as much as I want to be able to release these things to the world, we still have too many bugs and nuanced problems with it in its development. To be clear, the code still exists. We still do want to push this out, but that specific feature needs more love and unfortunately needs more time. So it
Hmm.
will be something we'll try to roll out later in this year.
Awesome. So can you kind of give us any hints to some cool new stuff we might be seeing in April coming up?
Yeah, I guess I can give you some hints. Within the next month or so, players are obviously going to have enough parts to be able to build their very own standard and elite Shepherd unique unit. As well, the team has been working very hard behind the scenes on a project that we are calling Generation 2 Buildings. I don't want to go into any depth here, but I'm just floating it out to the player base that we are not done with all our defensive content yet, so stay tuned.
So we ran a quality of life survey also a while back. Was that beneficial to the team at all? And can you kind of give us some insight on how you have used that feedback so far?
Yeah, these surveys are always great for me and the team to read, as it provides some real insight into how our player base views the game and interacts with the War Commander universe. Some of the most interesting things that we have found is how polar our community is around playing with friends. For example, I'm going to throw some percents at you. 32% of the people that answered the survey said that it was that playing with friends was the most rewarding part of the gaming experience, whereas 28% said that it was the worst part. So it was very obvious that, especially when it comes to concepts like playing with friends, that we're so polar in our in how we think.
Yeah.
Um, some obvious things that came out of it, which was not really a surprise to us, was that successfully defending your base against other attackers was one of the most satisfying things that people are doing in the game. And a close second was unlocking brand new units. The thing that people wanted to see the most is new defensive uniques as well as expand on new tech for existing units. So because of this feedback, we're able to better structure the content that we create and what type of roles that content needs to play in our current meta. I encourage everyone to fill out surveys when they see them, as we do read it and we do actively plan around what you, the players, are saying.
Great. So I think that'll do it for us here today. I want to thank you for joining us again on the briefing room, and we hope all of you at home enjoyed listening, and we will see you soon in the sector. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.